Thank you all for coming this afternoon. It's quite interesting to be together again. This is a unique feeling. This is my second conference in about 2 weeks, and before that it was 3 years. So this is a nice experience to see each other face to face again. Our goal for this session is to live up to what it's been billed as, which is a lively discussion. So we are going to try our best to avoid death by PowerPoint. But we have the bullets in the gun, so if that's what it takes, that's what we'll deliver. But I'm hoping that you'll help us here and ask questions, interrupt as much as you feel you want to. I know that's hard for British people. I've been told that by 2 of my colleagues here. Brits will never interrupt. But you Americans and others here, please help me out. COVID has also struck our panel twice, and I feared a third time, but we dodged that bullet. But at the end, we have Charlotte Mason from Edinburgh, who jumped in at the last minute. So as of Tuesday, she was invited to join the panel. So just thank you to Charlotte for stepping in. She's fantastic. She didn't need a lot of time. She's from Edinburgh University Press, and she's going to tell us all how to pronounce that correctly, by the way, because I haven't. But just a few comments on the panel that's here, just so you have a taste of things they might not tell you. Charlotte, I've been working with in the vendor-publisher relationship between De Gruyter and Edinburgh University Press, but we've also worked together in a professional organization, ALPSP, putting together a session for publishers this summer, a 2-day webinar. So we've spent a lot of time talking with each other on a lot of topics, and that's why I asked her to step in here. She has a lot to offer. Next, we have Janice Adlington, who's a friend from McMaster University in Canada. And we've been working together about 2 years, going on 3. And they're very creative in their collection development policies, in particular in our work together with De Gruyter, but beyond that. So I asked Janice to join us and share some of her thoughts and how things have changed, especially in regard to ebooks here. So fortunately, she was able. There are very few Canadians here. Rob Thiessen from Calgary is the other Canadian collections librarian I'm aware of here, but most of my Canadian contacts weren't coming to Charleston this year. Next, we have Karen Griever, who I've known for over 20 years, which is a little scary, isn't it, Karen? But we've worked together on approval plans and consortial collecting in various consortia, because she's from Kenyon College in Ohio, and they work in a couple of consortia, which she'll talk about. But Karen has a very dry sense of humor, so you have to pay attention when she's speaking, because there may be a joke in there. And and also she's what I would call a cool head. So when things get hot, which they often can, we all know those debates, she's the cooler head that will prevail and get things done. So I'm really glad she's here as well. And finally, an old friend, Tommy Grover from Multilingual Matters and Channelview Publications in Bristol, UK, which, however, has a connection with University of Toronto, which Tommy may or may not tell you about. But there is a Canadian connection in there, which is where this thing started. Tommy is one of the finest publishers in linguistics in the world. You know, the top 3 linguistics publishers are Multilingual Matters, John Benjamin's, and then a distant third is De Gruyter Mouton. But I think of Tommy as a small publisher, but as he pointed out to me, he's not a small publisher. They publish 50 to 60 books per year, but they're all in linguistics. So it's a large publisher in linguistics. But Tommy is fascinating, and he'll bring a lot to our panel. So you may have noticed, though, we have a larger publisher. If we set aside Oxford and Cambridge, who are university presses, but they're more they're top-notch presses, but they're very large. Once you get those out of the mix, university presses go from a max of about 300 titles per year and down pretty quickly. So Edinburgh is on the the higher side of that, and Tommy is on the lower side of that. So we get different perspectives. And I tried to do the same with the libraries. So we have McMaster, which is larger. It's not a University of Toronto or Harvard in scale, but it's a fairly large institution, so they collect a lot of stuff. And Karen, who's from Kenyon, it's an Oberlin school. It's smaller, fine arts, liberal arts, similar to multilingual in a way because they punch well above their weight, but a smaller institution. So I was trying to get some balance here in perspectives. I came across this quote from Stephen King, a neighbor of mine in Maine, who said in 2014, if you drop a book into the toilet, you can fish it out, dry it off, and read that book. But if you drop your Kindle in the toilet, you're pretty well done. Well, COVID came along, right? And suddenly libraries closed and you couldn't get that print book wherever you had to fish it from. You just couldn't fish it out. Suddenly that Kindle was the only way you were going to read it. So it's changed our perspective on things. So that's the basis of our discussion today. And one housekeeping matter I wanted to take care of here. Do you know the stereotypes, publishers think? And, well, which publishers? Are you talking about Elsevier, Wiley, Taylor and Francis? Or are you talking about Multilingual Matters, American Psychological Association, Guilford, Edinburgh? So, the publisher type, their size, their subject focus, their policies, mission, strategy, their brand, their resources vary widely. And so let's be careful not to say publishers are this or that. We have a lot of publishers here today, and we can get particular perspectives from different types. And the flip side of that is publishers who say, well, libraries think. Well, which library are you talking about? What community do they serve? What's their size? What are their budgets like? What are their policies? What's their strategy? What's their geographic location and culture? A German library, a German academic library, is very different in the way it goes about building collections from a Canadian library, for example. So I want to be sure we set aside those stereotypes. And one other thing I'd like to get to here, we have a good number of university presses in the audience, and I wonder if you could just stand up just for a brief second to identify yourselves. We have Oxford University Press, we have Amsterdam University Press, we have Princeton University Press, we have Bristol University Press, also /Policy Press, and
South Carolina.
University of South Carolina Press, where my friend was recently director, Richard Brown. But you have a new director now.
Yes.
Where did he come from?
Cornell.
Cornell. Any other publishers here? University Press of Mississippi? University Press of collectors of this university press stuff. All right, so I'm hoping that all of our press people, we have a good number here, can help us in this discussion. And again, everybody is interruptible. Don't be British about this. You know who I'm talking about, Joe. And don't ask why textbooks are so expensive. Thank you. All right, so a few of the topics we want to get to is the tipping point. For 10 years, I've been hearing questions from publishers. Are we reaching the tipping point? Is print going to give way to ebooks? And I wonder if during COVID, we have reached that tipping point for a lot of presses. I think we're pretty near 50-50 or higher on ebooks for most presses at this point. But it varies by their position in the market, the types of things they publish. So let's talk about that. There's been a lot of reassessing of positions and approaches because suddenly digital infrastructure became important, and it's really complicated, expensive, difficult to put together. The challenges, in particular for publishers, of collecting evidence from partners in order to make good decisions, and that's been really important and really difficult these past few years. So let's talk about what those challenges are. remoteness, because we're often working from home, closet, basement, wherever, and what impacts that's had on our organizations and infrastructure decisions. And then we'll get now the panelist presentations, which if you don't interrupt, it will be death by PowerPoint. So I'm going to try and break that up and ask you all questions. And finally, a thought is, was there a silver lining perhaps to COVID? And what have we learned? What are we learning? Anything else? Anybody care to interrupt right now? You're so well behaved. Let's hope that doesn't continue. All right. Well, we're going to start with Karen Griever from Kenyon College. Karen, it's all yours.
Okay, so just a little bit, start with a little bit of context about Kenyon, a small liberal arts college in a rural setting. A couple of the things that I think are relevant to our collecting, our budget is still down from where it was pre-pandemic, although I did get small increases in the last 2 years. But even though the budget's down, we somehow managed to build a new library building, so you can take what you want of that information. Location is very important, as Mike alluded in geography. So Kenyon is part of a couple of consortia. The smaller one, the Ohio 5, was 5 schools that are all fairly similar, small liberal arts schools. We're also part of OhioLink, which is almost all of the academic libraries in the state of Ohio, and that has a tremendous impact on how we do our collecting and what resources we're able to offer our students and our faculty. For many years, my focus on collecting had been on buying materials that are shareable, whether they were in print or whether they were ebooks. So a lot of my early ebook publishing was through OhioLink. And we started collecting ebooks quite some time ago. The first deal, a purchase deal, was started in 2006. So a fairly long arc of buying ebooks in that way. I held off on local publishing because local ebook purchasing because they're not shareable. And as part of the consortium, had a strong belief in sharing our resources, so that was an issue for me. The Ohio 5 group, we've done sort of less purchasing, but the tie-in is with Michael and de Gruyter. Several years ago, we started a small purchasing program with some of the university presses through de Gruyter. And that was because sort of the three of us together, we could negotiate a price point that was sort of reasonable for us. And then in terms of local collecting, we still buy print. We still have a print budget, which may make us in the minority for a number of schools these days. But I still do buy print, but then have expanded and evolved my thinking in terms of actually buying ebooks, both in terms of collections and in one-offs. The one-off purchasing, that's the piece that was probably most affected by the pandemic in terms of we had individual requests from faculty who were teaching either for a brief period online. We were only closed for that brief stint in the late semester of 2020. After that, we did hybrid for a year, and then now we're back full-time in person. But there has been some turnover in what faculty are willing to accept in terms of, or prefer in terms of whether e or print. So done a variety of models in terms of publishing. Then I want to briefly look at the cost differential and what we're paying for. So our OhioLink ebooks, and I screwed up my slide here and didn't put the publishers here. It's really not relevant. It's the price range that I was interested in showing. So for the OhioLink ebooks, I'm paying between $1 and $10 a title for those ebooks that I'm purchasing through OhioLink. For the Kenyon books that I'm purchasing, the price point goes up from range of 25 to about 140. So my OhioLink ebooks much cheaper than my locally purchased ebooks. And then the last cost slide I have is rental costs. and those, again, dramatically lower than purchase price. So those are some, they say, this tension between shareable ebooks and purchase.
Mr. Rental, is that per year?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Is that per year?
Yeah, it's cost per title, rental cost is per title per year. Yeah, and it's just, the slide is just to show the range of,
Okay.
so did we get the question answered? Okay, fabulous.
Thank you, Rob.
So for me, the tension is in my consortial Ohio Link ebooks, much cheaper, but that the decision-making process and the available dollars that we have to do new deals, that process is much longer. I can move much more nimbly to purchase collections and one-offs locally. So that continues to be just an ongoing tension challenge. I'm not sure how to phrase it. And then just the ongoing challenges of budget and so on that I think almost all libraries are dealing with. So that's my 2 cents.
Was any of this collecting driven by COVID? That is the lack of access to the library, or was this evolving naturally anyway?
For the most part, this was evolving naturally at Kenyon. I say the one-off ebook purchasing that I didn't really talk about in any of the slides, that part was much more COVID driven because it really had held off on individual title publishing locally. But when we were teaching hybrid classes, that became more of an issue. So I still buy probably more print than I do one-off ebooks, but we've definitely loosened the reins on doing that.
Have there been any subjects that have been particularly resistant to ebooks that you saw change during this?
That I saw change?
Well, like classics.
They're still resistant. At least my department is still resistant to ebooks. I wish I knew. I mean, as far as I'm able to get an explanation, it's that the long form reading, that it's just too hard to do on a screen, and
What about the wider, the research?
Yeah. I know that. You know that. They are unwilling to admit it, unwilling to say habit. Yeah.
Don't the students demand that of the researchers?
Can I just ask you to repeat that into the microphone for the recording?
Sorry.
Don't the students or your users, don't they demand
Both my students and my faculty are on a wide spectrum of acceptance of print to E. Mm-hmm. I have students who prefer print. I have faculty who prefer E. I have people all along the spectrum. At a small institution, I also work at times at our research and reference desk. When I work with students, sometimes we find the e-book first, and I get the response of, can you get a print copy for me? So they are still all over the place. So therefore, in collecting, I am all over the place.
What about open access? Has that grown for you during the pandemic?
We started in terms of supporting open access before the pandemic. The pandemic, the hit to my budget hit my OA support as well, because I had to sort of make some decisions as to where I could put my remaining dollars. So that may change as I get some money back, but it didn't take away all the support that we're doing for OA, but it cut into it.
What does it mean, your OA budget?
I mean, we support a certain number of projects that support open access. So things like Knowledge Unlatched, things like Open Library of Humanities.
So it's a cost there's a cost attached.
Well, there doesn't have to be. We chose
Oh.
a number of years ago to support some of these open access projects. That was an individual library choice, but in terms of the problem with usage of OA books, it's harder. It's much harder to measure. Are my students using that? Who is using that? That whole issue has yet to be worked out. So that's an ongoing challenge.
Yeah, because that during the pandemic, that was very interesting. The OA offers that came from all kinds of aggregators, they became enormous.
We turned a lot of that on, but I think because our students, we had never taught, online was never a portion of our program, so that whole rapid switch in March 2020 to online, we turned on all the spigots of all the open resources that were available, but because our faculty were just like, we just need to get through this semester, I think they didn't have the bandwidth to take advantage of a lot of those resources that were opened up.
Yeah, and that's a good topic because it wasn't just the OA stuff, but all of the aggregators turned on a lot of content at the time.
And I say we opened up the spigots, but the usage did not bear out. And sort of talking to faculty after the fact, we were just trying to do the best we could to get through the rest of that semester with everybody in one piece.
So if we could just get back to our PowerPoint, because that's really what we want to do. Vanessa, next time you're up here. What's the question? Seriously.
I'm really curious if you talk about your budget shrinking, has part of that budget gone to journals?
I had just an overall collections budget cut. Where I dealt with the cuts, those were sort of some internal decisions. Some cuts I made were journals. Some cuts was the OA support. Some of it was databases. It sort of made cuts as judiciously as possible, sort of across a wide variety of formats.
So we're going to move on to Tommy just to ensure that everybody gets to at least speak for a few minutes, but thank you very much. This is exactly the way I was hoping it would go, back and forth.
If you want to keep asking Karen questions, I'm very comfortable with that.
No, it's good for Tommy to talk.
So we are a small, family-owned, independent business based in Bristol. We were founded to, I guess, publish and promote and collect research on bi- and multilingualism, really initially after our family GP told my Finnish mother not to speak Finnish to her children. And that was not going to happen. So my parents went out, found a lot of positive research about bilingualism being published in a variety of places, and saw a need and an opportunity to publish this in one coherent place. This was at the time when the OISE working papers in bilingualism were coming to an end, and so we grew together really we've filled a gap in the applied linguistics community, and we've grown together with that community who we still support, and they support us. It's very much a mutual relationship. We also publish a small list in tourism studies, which there's another serendipity there, which I won't go into. And nowadays we only publish books. We used to publish journals on the sort of classic model of launch a journal, build it up, build a community around that journal, and then publish books to do the fun stuff that wasn't in the journal.
Tommy, where did your journals go?
So they went to Taylor and Francis.
Of course.
Of course. So, just before COVID, I guess we had 7 members of staff, of which 5 were full-time, 2 part-time, almost all office-based. We publish 60 books a year, and we are a largely sustainable not always profitable business. So when we think about commercial publishers, even if we're for profit, it doesn't necessarily mean we make a profit. We attend and sponsor a lot of key academic conferences, the American Association of Applied Linguistics being one of the main ones that we go to, but there are a lot of smaller ones all around the world, in Europe, Japan. We've tried to get to Africa to some conferences, and we still send out a print catalogue, and there are a lot of challenges: Brexit, open access, and global inclusion. Our print and ebook sales are about a 65 to 35% split. So then, and back then we're always at the point where we're about one crisis away from bankruptcy. Then the crisis hits. COVID happens. We send the staff home for what we thought was going to be 1 month. They're still at home, most of them. Print sales disappear. A big UK wholesaler goes bankrupt. All conference travel plans are cancelled. And we have to figure out how we make payroll next month. So we approached our author community and we asked them if they would mind us not paying their royalties just yet. And we were absolutely overwhelmed by the support that we had. Many wrote to us saying, do you know what, you don't actually ever need to pay us your royalties, which was really heartwarming at a time when we were all quite scared. We stopped sending gratis copies of our books. I cut my salary to next to nothing. I asked my colleagues what they would need to live on if it came to that day that I had to ask them, what do you need to pay the rent? Thankfully, that never actually happened. But we could see all this time that individuals were purchasing our books on our website. We couldn't always send them out because the warehouse might have had issues in restaffing the warehouse, and that's an issue that a lot of is in the background, that we don't see those people that are picking and packing the books. So we made the decision to participate in all of the partner and aggregator programs that were available so that universities could have content. And at the same time as we were struggling to sell books, we had a massive flood of manuscripts starting to come in as faculty went home. They weren't yet hybrid or online teaching. They were trying to figure stuff out, had spare time. The manuscript that had been under the table for 5 years was dusted off and sent to us, and in most cases it was still really good. But we were always aware that our early career authors were probably in precarious job situations and worried about their own lives. Towards the end of that year, we thankfully started seeing that ebook money was still coming in. And for us, the problem with ebook money is that it's reported often quarterly rather than monthly like print sales, and often a quarter delayed. So it wasn't until September that we knew really what had happened in April in terms of ebook sales. So COVID year 2 was, back then, a new normal. We're still at home, staff are tired, the weather is less good, everybody is burnt out, and online conferences are starting to become a thing. Authors are all hybrid teaching or online teaching, and are consequently, they're busy, exhausted, don't want to write books. But we continue to support our academic associations and conferences. We tried attending conferences and exhibiting online, but that never really worked. But we always took the decision that we would sponsor the conference anyway, because that link with the association was important. And to fill the gap with those academic conferences, we started running our own seminars and outreach programs to early career researchers, which worked quite well, but then resulted in all of our authors wanting us to do a session for each book. And when you publish 60 books a year and you only have 2 members of marketing staff, that's really challenging. And when your authorship is truly global, trying to find a time when both the Japanese and the Americans on the East Coast and the West Coast and the Europeans can all participate is almost impossible. But our income is steady and our costs are really low because we're no longer travelling to conferences, we're no longer able to mail out a catalogue because we don't even know where people will be. So, and the ebook sales have now grown to about 60%, where...
At this point, did you find that your books had reached a new audience with libraries, having opened them up to the aggregators for the free use during year 1? Did you find that just there was proof of usage during that time period that carried over?
Yes, we really think so. We reached, with Michael's help and De Gruyter partnership program, we reached a good market with the Canadian libraries. We ran a seminar for the Canadian Research Consortium, and so we really think there was much more visibility for our books, and that did result in sales. It's not clear from all of the aggregators, because we don't get the same data from everybody, but from the ones we have seen, we think there are clear specific.
I'd echo that from EUP as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that specific kind of data is very useful.
I think, because we have 2 more here, I'm going to move us along. But Tommy, are there any summary comments you might like to make?
So I guess the problem for us is now understanding where we are in terms of a number of things. So the print to e-split is unclear at the moment. We're seeing a lot of print returns which are depressing the real print sales. We don't know whether these are books that were sold in 2020 or 2019 or even 2018 that some of the bigger wholesalers are finding in their warehouse and sending back to us. Costs are increasing. Inflation is going to be a real problem going forwards, and we are trying to take some of the lessons from COVID that involve travelling less and having less impact on the environment through our travel to conferences, and we're trying to figure out how we do that community outreach and meet all our new early career researchers if we're not at a conference with a book exhibit and the shy grad student can sidle up to the books and pretend to be buying a book, and then you say, oh, by the way, what are you working on? How we do that in a purely online environment, I do not know.
Thanks, Tommy. Let's move on to Janice and then see if we can weave together some thoughts here. I'm just conscious, I know Charlotte came in at the end and has put together a very nice presentation too, and I want to make sure she's not left out.
Thank you,
Janice.
Michael. I do have slides. Some of these will go through pretty quickly because I'm also aware of time, but I did want to give some content to my section of this. So I'm speaking from McMaster University, which is a public university in Southern Ontario, located halfway between Toronto and Niagara Falls, with a lovely view of Lake Ontario. We have currently an FTE of almost 35,000. Pre-COVID, we were just over 28,000, so we have grown considerably, and the variation in enrollment is a bit of an issue. Our acquisitions budget for everything except for medicine is 11.2 million Canadian, and currency exchange is also a major issue. Our classes are in person, and we Pre-COVID, we had very few online classes. During COVID, hybrid, as of this fall, returned 97% in person. And that is going to have an impact on what we're doing with books and the library collections. So pre-COVID, we had a mixed strategy for ebooks. We had faculty selectors for print and ebooks. No print approval plans, no publisher blanket orders. But we did have ebook front list purchases via our consortia, CRKN, the national consortium, and OCL, our provincial consortium. So we were purchasing and are purchasing Oxford, Springer, the Canadian Academic University Presses, and a variety of other presses, including De Gruyter titles that are being hosted, the university press titles hosted on De Gruyter, via an arrangement through CRKN. We also, since 2007, have had a PDA program running with ProQuest, and that has grown and shrunk over the years. A very small number of subscription packages, so the ACLS Humanities eBooks, Cognet, a few other very small things, and no EBAs. Our principles were to honor the departmental format preferences. So because of the faculty selectors, we knew that history and literature preferred print, and that linguistics, for example, was fine with ebooks. We wanted perpetual access to build our collections. We also negotiated local load of ebooks onto Scholars Portal, the hosting platform in Ontario. We wanted a lot of material. We wanted it forever, and we wanted it locally. And we also tried very hard not to duplicate print and ebooks in order to stretch our budget and make it go further. Some of our collection strategy was informed by a survey that we did in 2013, where we asked our users, our faculty, graduate students, and upper-level undergraduates about their format preferences. And to nobody's surprise, what we heard in the comments is that they really wanted both, because they wanted to be able to quickly see whether things were relevant or not. But in many cases, when they really wanted to engage with a book, they wanted the print. We had 1/3 response from our faculty, and the preference for print across all disciplines was there. So we haven't redone that survey, but that informed what we did pre-COVID. Then, of course, COVID hit. We all know what happened in March 2020. We left the office with a cheery, "See you in 2 weeks." And in September 2021, our library reopened. And many of our classes remained online for the last academic year as well. So during the closures, we followed the strategies that many of your libraries also would have taken. So we took full advantage of HATI's emergency temporary access, which matched over 800,000 of our print titles. We also did curbside pickup for books. And whenever users asked for a print book in our circulating collection, if we could buy the ebook, we did that for them. So they were getting the ebook versions whether they wanted it or not. And yes, and we had a few complaints about, and there is a question.
There's a word that I don't know, curbside?
Ah,
What does that mean?
It would be driving up or walking up with an appointment, and we would deliver a little bag of the books that you had requested and slide it safely into the trunk of your car. But we tried very hard not to have to do that. We also started a books by mail service where we would mail books to people. So we are now at COVID, where we are doing ebooks everywhere. So we added just about everything that we could. We took full advantage of the publisher offers to provide temporary access to their licensed collections. So we opened up the EBSCO ebooks, De Gruyter, JSTOR. We had marked records flying into our catalog and then flying out again 6 months later. We also added large ebook subscriptions that we had not actually done before. So we added ProQuest's Academic Complete ebooks and the O'Reilly Tech ebooks, Safari for Higher Education, and we still have those continuing. We also started EBAs. So the list is on the screen. We have 6 of them running right now. And we're now in our 3rd year for all of these. We've purchased more. We added individual front lists, again, many through our consortia. We expanded priority back files. So we purchased additional titles from the Academic Canadian University presses. And we identified presses for priority exploration. And the things that did make us pay attention in many cases were innovative and flexible options that combined front file with some kind of expanded access to backlist. And that is also something that we pay attention to on open access offers. So, are we duplicating print? You betcha. But that is the change that we're making now. And it was not really a concern during COVID. It's something that we are going to have to be looking at very closely going forward. And yes, another question.
I'm curious how you now experience EBA, since it's new to you since the pandemic started. What is your idea?
We found it to be valuable. We're certainly seeing titles being used that would never have been selected. Do you have a little bit of a concern about what we'll be left with if we cancel any or pull out of any of these EBAs down the road? Because I don't necessarily see them all continuing forever.
No.
Rob, can I ask from Calgary, what are you doing with EBA? I know you collect a lot of ebooks. They have the Taylor Family Digital Library and have for a long time, so have a lot of experience.
Well, for the last 2 years, we've been using year-end money, one-time money, to buy EBAs, and we've continued with them. We started doing EBAs in 2016, 2017, and we would do an EBA for a year, and then discontinue it, and then move an EBA to another publisher. And we never heard any complaints from students, but we would often get very bitter complaints from faculty because, of course, an EBA is a hybrid between purchasing and subscribing. And so if you have access to 50,000 books, you buy several hundred at the end of the year, at the end of the EBA, and then you pull out. There's a long tail of content that, that people have used that is no longer available. And it's, like I said, I'm sure there were students who were upset, but I never heard any complaints from students. It was always from faculty.
And Janice, I'm just going to prod you a bit so we get to Charlotte, but we've got just 14 minutes left. So
yes. So I am going to I'm going to run. I would still like to just speak quickly about that of course, the profile of title by title selections really changed. The ebooks, we ended up buying fewer one at a time, and they were more expensive per. Next slide. This is a slide that we use to impress administrators. Those of you who do this kind of thing know that this is probably a bogus number because it does include duplicates. This was a bibliographic record count, but in the first COVID year, we added almost 500,000 ebooks. And the difficulty with this is that with such very large numbers, how do you pay attention to individual titles or individual publishers? Ebook usage. We, of course, pay attention to usage. It did not increase during the first COVID year for every publisher. We added a lot of content. The overall usage went up. This does not include all the platforms we have. It does not include books at Scholars Portal. But it does inform the continuation of certain subscription packages and also certain EBA programs, or to a lesser extent, some front file purchases. So the present is that we are back to full-time classes. Our faculty do expect us to have multi-user ebooks for their courses. There is a little issue that the librarians here have probably seen, of faculty finding the single-user price for a book on the publisher's website and just saying, oh, get this for my class. We do the very best we can. Costs of individual ebooks do appear to be increasing, and as a reaction, we are looking again at print prices and comparing them with the ebooks, and if paperbacks are significantly cheaper, and they're in departments that have already expressed some interest in print, we are going back to print. So our factors for adding publisher collections, of course, the quality of the books that are published is a primary factor. But after that, it would be, are there incentives? Can publishers open up their backlist with access if we purchase their front list? And then, of course, we look at the overall cost, accessibility, the diversity of the material, the platform, the DRM free, all of the usual factors. And our questions for the future, actually the big one for me is, should we be thinking about our partner libraries? What is going on with collaborative collections or cooperative collections? We can lend print very easily. We don't easily have a way of lending ebooks, although controlled digital lending is something that we're very, very interested in, the developments in that area, and especially the legal developments.
Can I interject there? So what's interesting between Karen and Janice, right, both operate in consortial environments, but they're different. OhioLink will buy a resource and it's for all of OhioLink, right? And similarly with the Ohio 5, although that's kind of more of a hybrid. But the CRKN consortium is more of, I describe it almost as a buying club. That is the CRKN organization, which is terrific, and it's of the libraries, by the libraries, for the libraries. They negotiate with vendors for the best deal, and if they reach that, they have a collection strategies committee made up of Canadian librarians. If they reach an agreement, then each individual library can choose to buy that product, whatever it is, from the publisher or not. That content is often, as an OhioLink, locally loaded also onto a platform. So it's on the publisher or vendor platform as well as a local platform. But the issue of sharing for CRKN, where everyone can opt in and buy it, is an issue, whereas for OhioLink, who's buying it for everyone, then everyone has access. So that when we think about consortia, we have to be really aware that there are 4 or 5 types of consortia. And even though we have 2 really strong, valuable ones here, 2 of the best, I'd say, they're very different, and that sharing issue is big. We're going to have to pass the baton to Charlotte at this point, and yeah, more PowerPoint, because we're running short on time here, and Charlotte has some things to say. Thank you, Janice.
I'm going to move that water. Hello, everyone. Hi. So I've had some really interesting conversations here today. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Well, first, can we get a little bit of a lesson in linguistics, and ask Tommy for help if you need it?
I was going to say, so this is the first time I've come to Charleston, and it's fantastic to be here, and I've had some really insightful conversations and met some brilliant people, and it's been great, and I can't wait to come back already. But I have to say, one thing that is a very consistent conversation that I've been having with people is how to pronounce Edinburgh. And we've heard all sorts of things, and I said probably by the end of the conference I will be calling Edinburgh by lots of different names. But also Braveheart, there's been lots of Braveheart connections too. But anything goes, and we're just happy if anyone's talking about Edinburgh University Press.
So it rhymes with iceberg, right? Edinburgh.
No, Edinburgh. So originally started, this is just a very brief history, we can trace our roots back to 1637, where there was a printing press that was affiliated to the university, and it was largely kind of Bible studies, Bible printing. And EUP, as we know it, was founded in 1949. That was the publishing arm of the university. And in 2001, we became a wholly owned subsidiary of the University of Edinburgh, which is really important because that means that we have financial independence, and we are closely linked to the university, and we value the relationship we have with them enormously, but it means that we fund ourselves completely, and we grew the press, and we now are looking in our next, we're budgeting this year for 270 books, and we've got 53 journals now, and we're adding 3 more next year. So we'll be looking at 56 journals and growing in the arts, humanities, and social sciences. It's roughly kind of 75-25 split between books and journals. And to kind of talk about the kind of print and digital split, we are still more print than we are e. So we're at the moment kind of a 54 46 split, and we think that probably in a couple of years, by 2025, we'll be looking at that kind of being 50-50. So that tipping point yet for us is still to come. We are growing our list, so I think that is helping the print stay strong for us. But obviously, we saw a kind of a big explosion in ebook sales during the pandemic, and thankfully we had completed our backlist digitization project in 2019, so we were well equipped for the pandemic, if anyone was well equipped for the pandemic. So we also grew staff a lot. We now have a team of 53 and counting, and really recognise the need for valuable staff to help us with our mission. So like most university press publishers, we publish about kind of 80% monograph, but we do critical editions, and we do textbooks, and we do some academic trade as well as reference works. And we, like most university presses, we focus on our local regions. So we are well known for Scottish resources as well, but we are world renowned in our Islamic and Middle Eastern studies list, for example. We're very strong in philosophy, particularly Deleuze studies, but language and linguistics, film, literature, classics, ancient history, law, and we're building up our art and visual culture list as well. So I'm not going to go into the books, but if anybody would like to come and speak to me afterwards, I'd be really happy to discuss some of the range of our books here. And then I didn't want to leave out journals, because we had 3 new journals in 2022. We've got 3 more coming that we're very excited about in 2023. We've got an archive as well, and would love to speak to anyone who wants to come and talk to me about those. But that's
interesting, Charlotte, that 2 of those, the new ones for 2023, one is coming from Guelph in Canada.
Yep. And
the other one, the New Americanist, is coming from, of course, Warsaw, Poland.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. I think probably the biggest thing a major thing that happened for us in 2021, our long-serving CEO, Timothy Wright, retired, and our new CEOs, we had a change of leadership with Nicola Ramsey, who has been at Edinburgh for a long time, has come up from the editorial side of the business. And so there was a change of leadership, and that's been a really substantial thing. Now we've kind of come out of the other side. We've worked really hard as an exec team to build a 5-year strategy, and we've looked at the challenges that we faced, during COVID and where we want to go as a publisher, and make sure that we're fit for purpose and we're fit to grow, and identified where we need to work more and do better and be more efficient. So the first thing we did was to consult our staff, and we came up with a vision, which is connecting people and ideas to inspire creative thinking, open new perspectives, and change the world we live in. I'm conscious of time, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about that, but our values are also aspirational, responsible, and collaborative, and that's to do with the quality of the content, to do with the responsibility and the sustainability, financially, but also environmentally, and to be collaborative. And that's part of the reason why I'm here, because we want to make sure that we really have connections. That also poses some challenges, because we've been talking about how we do that. You know, we have reps and agents and third parties and distributors around the world, but we'd like to be having more dialogue with libraries, and how we actually do that, the size we are, is a challenge for us, but we want to be far more collaborative. But also, authors are always at the heart of everything we do, and it's about the author and the quality of the products that we publish. So all of that is tied into our values and our mission.
Do you know, Charlotte, if I can just interrupt for a second, Tommy, I see Multilingual Matters is fitting into that community, which is why they've done well in Canada, because we present them together with the university presses, because really that's where Tommy's press fits. But it's shared by the university presses, and that first slide I put up there, publishers are, or publishers think, you know, the university press community does have some common characteristics, and this is one that separates them from others. And really, when you talk about publishers think, you need to separate out university presses from the others in terms of mission, values, vision.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, open access is obviously a really, you know, a big thing for us. It's an opportunity, but it also does represent some challenges. But we have funds, and we want to invest, and we want to experiment and make sure that we're in the right models, and we're making sure that our content is as discoverable as it can be. That's also the non-access titles as well. So with the biggest thing I can probably say at the moment, forefront of our mind, is the technology and the staff, and we're implementing 3 systems at the moment. We've identified the need to have our processes much better and more efficient, and the metadata and the discoverability to be global and to be quick and efficient means that we need to implement a new title management system. We need to implement a CRM system, and at the same time we're implementing a finance system as well. So we have some big challenges, because that means, you know, our day-to-day jobs still have to continue, and we need buy-in from everybody to be able to make this happen and make it successful.
All without subsidies from the university.
Without subsidies from the university.
We're at the time limit, so last word about...
Well, so the last word, and this, it's super exciting, but Edinburgh University Press is hosting the University Press Redux Conference in spring 2024 in Edinburgh. We would love to see as many of you there as possible. You'll have a great treat in Edinburgh, and if you wanted to express any interest for that, you can do that via that link up here. But come and see me, and it's just great to have the conversation and be here, so thank you.
Well, thank you all, and thank our panelists for coming long distances, also those in the audience. Have a great next second half of the conference.